So many of us have experienced some kind of painful or traumatic event in our lives which have left us with ongoing struggles, especially with our mental health. Today's guest has gone through his fair share of trauma and has found a way to overcome. We are joined by Adam Davis. He's a former police officer and hostage negotiator and the author of Unconquered, 10 Principles to Overcome Adversity and Live Above Defeat. Adam, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank y'all so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So can you just tell us what prompted you to write Unconquered, and how did you come up with the somewhat unusual title?
You know, for the past nearly decade, I've traveled all across this country talking to audiences and sharing my personal story and sharing how I overcame childhood sexual abuse, alcoholism, and the day I tried to end my life, and what faith redeemed me in a relationship with God and how that changed me. And I've seen the change in people's lives, and I've seen what happened, and I thought, what would it look like if we put this in a book? And you know, we were sitting around one evening around a bonfire, and one of my family members said, you know, the words that really describe what you've overcame are semper invictus, always undefeated. And so out of that was born Unconquered and the Live Unconquered movement, which is telling people, you know, Romans 8:37 says we're more than conquerors through Christ. And nothing that we endure, nothing that we overcome, nothing that we face can affect the life that He's called us to live when we trust in Him with the pain, with the joy, with the victory. And one day this life will end and we'll spend eternity with Him. So no matter what, we win.
Now, you are brutally honest about the trauma you experienced as a child, even talking about ending your own life. Why is it important for you to share these details, as painful as it must be?
Well, for a couple of reasons. Number one is, you know, I remember for a long time, whether it's right or wrong, for a long time, I felt like I was the only one who felt like I was feeling defeated. Felt like I was the only one that was going through what I had dealt with as a child, as a teenager, some of the things I was going through as an adult. And then the more I began to talk about it from stages across the country, the more I realized, wow, I'm not alone. There's a lot of people out here that have dealt with similar issues. And when we expose the lies of the enemy of our soul, and we present people with the truth, it changes things because you don't know what you don't know. And if all you know is pain and you don't know the ability to experience healing, then you're going to be stuck in a prison of pain, in a prison of your past. And so it's important that I share it with people because He set me free. And I have an obligation to tell the world about what Jesus did for me. And very practically, I'm here today because of Him. And for me, that looks like giving Him the pain every single day, relying on Him, surrendering the pain to Him, living with open hands and open heart with Him, and operating in a different fashion than what the world teaches us. The world teaches us you fight to the death, but He says surrender, bring all your burdens to me. I've got you. And those burdens may sometimes be stuff from your past, stuff that you've done, or something that somebody else has done to you. So it's important to let people know you're not alone, and that there's a better way. You were created for more.
Now, those who have experienced trauma, they often try to bury the shame, guilt, and pain from those experiences they endured. For you, it eventually caught up with you as an adult. So looking back, what prevented you from seeking help sooner?
You know, I have analyzed that very question for a long time. And, you know, initially I thought it was pride. I thought it was guilt. I thought it was shame. But at the end of the day, it was fear. Fear was introduced to me at a very young age through the first person who was not a family member. No family member ever hurt me. But the first person who hurt me, it was, if you tell anybody about this, I'm going to kill you. The second one, it was something very similar. And so fear had a stronghold in my life for a very long time. And sometimes we don't even realize that we're making decisions based on fear. And so I always like to say this, you know, some of my worst decisions I've ever made were because of fear, and some of the best decisions I didn't make or were delayed in making were because of fear. And so the biggest thing that kept me from seeking help sooner and taking this first step to healing sooner was fear.
Now, prior to becoming an author, you told me that you've written 9 books so far. You pursued a career in law enforcement, which placed you in physical danger. What motivated you to put the safety of others above your own?
I wanted to be like the good men that I knew growing up. My dad's owned a business for more than 45 years, been in business for himself, and a lot of his friends are law enforcement officers just because of the nature of the work he does. And I saw these men, and they were good men, and they're still good men, and they had good families, and I wanted to be like that. And and I felt like in some way, if I could go out and stop what happened to me from happening to others or help bring justice to victims, then that was a way of me giving back. And so, I thought it was going to be something I did for the rest of my life and, have a long and successful career. But God had other plans. And here I am. I never dreamed the day I raised my right hand and took an oath to serve my community. I never dreamed that I would be here today, having written several books and having an impact on lives all across the country and around the world. So all of it's for His glory.
That's amazing. Now, you talked about how you were at a very low point in your life and you considered suicide. Can you just tell us what stopped you and what do you say to others that are considering that decision?
For a long time, I felt defeated. I know what it feels like to sit in a church pew during a service, get up and leave, and it's like I feel defeated. No matter what, I feel defeated. I feel beat down. I can hear the sermons. I can even read the scripture, but I still feel defeated. And at that point, I had gone through a time where I was drinking really heavy most every night and wound up being separated from my wife and living in a portable storage building. And I got up on a Sunday morning and I had lost the people that I love the most, my best friend, my wife, and my kids who, I adore. But everything, I was so selfish. I was focused on me. I was focused on my pain and struggles and all this other stuff. And I felt like the only way out. So sitting in a patrol car, I pulled my weapon out and I paused and I cried out to God. And I said, if you have a reason to keep me here, if you got a plan for my life, you can have me. Otherwise, I'm tired of hurting. I'm tired of fighting. And, I've tried for nearly 10 years to put into words, whether speaking or writing, what he did for me in that car. And the only way I can tell you, I felt a perfect peace and I felt like an embrace of absolute perfect love. And, what I tell other people who are in those places is number one, the pain you're going through right now, it doesn't have to be forever. It's not a life sentence. Number two, there is more for you in this life. There's victory for you. And what he did for me was not only introduce me to a perfect love and a perfect peace, and I had an encounter that changed everything, but he gave me a desire to live again. And for a lot of people, they've just been knocked down and knocked down so much that they just want to stay down. And my message is get back up. It's time to get back in the fight because there's a God who loves you, and there's a love that is greater than anything that has betrayed you. And He has a purpose for your life beyond the pain you've experienced. And there is healing in Jesus' name, and He can set you free. It doesn't matter what you've gone through or what you've done or what's been done to you. He has a plan for your life, and if you'll give it to Him and you'll ask Him for it, I promise you, He will not fail you.
That's just amazing to hear because you're saying that you were dealing with fear. And then when you were in your patrol car, you felt this love and peace. And it's like that Bible verse about how perfect love casts out all fear, eh?
Absolutely, His word came to life. I'm not a really super intelligent person. I believe that God's given me a gift, but it's not intellectual in nature. And I can tell you from the depths of my soul, that moment in that car, when I encountered that, the first thing I said was, I've got to tell everybody I know about this because I knew so many people hurting. And that turned into where we are today. And, He restored my marriage. My wife and I'll be married this fall, 23 years. We got three beautiful children. They're growing up really fast. And I think about often where they would be had He not intervened and redeemed me that day. And so call on the name of Jesus. I know that sounds super simple, but don't walk away from the childlike faith He's called us to live and abide in, because in that place we walk away from intellectual understanding of who He is, and we have a relationship, and we're able to abide in who He is.
Now, you mentioned the word surrender earlier, and often people think surrender is failure, but you write that surrender leads to freedom and healing. Can you tell us how that is so?
Well, think about if you're holding two hands and your hands are closed and they're really tight grips and you're holding on to the past or you're holding on to what you have and what you have hasn't worked. So open your hands, release what you've got, give it to him, and watch what he does with the pain. He can turn something beautiful out of that stuff. And a lot of people, I remember even in my own situation, I was like, where were you at when this happened? If you're good and if you're loved, where were you at when these things happened? And for several months prior to my experience in a patrol car, I was, and it sounds awful, I was sort of interrogating God on the basis of his goodness and love. And it's odd that I don't think it's odd. I think it's just God that that's how he would meet me in the car that day. And I think a lot of times we want to know where were you at when this happened, and he's never failed us. He's always been with us. All we got to do is call on him, but we can't do that when we're trying to live in control of our own life. And so that's what I'm saying is surrender what you have and all of who you are to him, because the things of his kingdom and the ways of his kingdom are opposite of the ways of this world. The ways of this world says cling to what you have and hold on to what you have. The ways of his kingdom says, come to me, all who are heavy laden and burdened, and I will give you rest. My yoke is easy, my burden's light. And when we come to him with what we have and surrender it to him, our life, we get to live a John 10:10 life, a life to the fullest, a life of abundance. And abundance begins in the soul. Abundance begins in here, not with all the material stuff.
You talk about this unconquered code in your book. Can you just share with our viewers a few of those elements of what this unconquered code is?
I think the most important and probably my favorite is acknowledge the pain. Ignoring the pain will not make it go away. It just continues to fester. But if you acknowledge the pain and then seek the healer, you're going to find some freedom. You're going to find tremendous freedom. Number two, I think is second most important, is forgiveness is the very first step in the journey of healing. After you acknowledge that pain, you're going to say, forgiveness. I remember saying, I'll never forgive so and so. I'll never forgive these people. I'll never forgive this person. But the reality is, forgiveness is an act of obedience that we take in faith. We take a step of faith and obedience to the Father when we forgive. It's not because we're condoning it or letting it go. We're putting that authority in His hands. We're taking it out of our own. And so, acknowledge the pain, forgive. There's freedom there. That's the first step in the journey of healing. And then I would probably say third most important is going to be surrender. Surrender. This is a call. So many of us fight and we try to do things on our own. And it's become something I try to say and pray every day and just kind of stay in that place in my heart. Lord, I surrender to you. I give everything I've got to you. Use me how you will. Do what you want to with me. Let my will be yours and yours be mine. Let me be in alignment with what you want for my life. And that includes healing all the pain. He is faithful in all things, including healing.
That's amazing. Now, you believe that God has called you into ministry and speaking. So, what kind of feedback are you hearing from audiences when you share your message?
Well, I've seen people who dealt with unforgiveness for, I think one gentleman said 47 years, and God set him free in a moment. Another 35 years. I've seen marriages restored. I've seen lives completely transformed. I've got messages from people who had planned their suicide and they had an encounter with a living God and he changed everything. I've had people that wanted to walk away from their families, walk away from their careers, walk away from whatever God had called them to, and he restored them because they gave it all to him and he's working in their life. So I've seen a number of incredible miracles. And some people might say, well, they're small miracles, they're little miracles. But I think anytime a life is changed and somebody gives their heart and life to him, that is the biggest miracle of all. And especially when we get to see the healing happen. I was just in New York City and met a gentleman and had a privilege to speak to him. And he said he'd been an alcoholic for 50 years and contemplated suicide multiple times and heard my message. And he's like, I surrender. I give everything to him. And I'm tired of fighting and I'm ready for him to take the wheel. And he's got the reins now. He's in control. He's Lord. He's King. And I'll do what he wants because I've made a mess of it. And that's the way I feel. I can make a mess of it And he will redeem you. He will reconcile you. He will restore you back to better before than you were before the pain, if you will give it to him.
Well, we're out of time, but I just want to give you a quick opportunity to tell our viewers where they can find out more about your ministry and also take a look at your book.
Yeah, probably the best way is go to unconqueredbook.com, unconqueredbook.com. That's my website. That's how you can find me. And then I'm on social media, the official Adam Davis on Facebook and Instagram.
Adam Davis is the author of Unconquered, 10 Principles to Overcome Adversity and Live Above Defeat. Adam, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for your time.